All right, let's get into a little NFL Wildcard weekend. And there is a ton of big games to discuss, and the odds have been pretty much moving all week long. As you can see from our Betfred odds, Seattle and San Francisco is the first game this weekend. San Francisco is a 9.5 favorite here, home favorite, and the total in this game is a pretty low number at 42. Well, this is interesting because you have two relatively inexperienced quarterbacks. I mean, Geno Smith has a heck of a lot more experience in the NFL than Brock Purdy. Now, a lot of things went the Niners' way when these two teams played each other in Seattle. I'll be honest with you, I was on Seattle and lost that play. But what I will say is there's still a big issue that you have an inexperienced quarterback. You might have the best coach in the NFL right now in Kyle Shanahan, though, which definitely helps. But, Seattle is disrespected in this case. And I have to, just think to myself, what would I be feeling if I was coming into a game against a division opponent this big of a dog? The way that Pete Carroll must be thinking is, well, I would expect him to try to slow this thing down. You don't want a ton of offense coming from George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, CMC, right? You want to try to slow the clock down a little bit if you're Seattle, but you actually have a very good weapon when it comes to slowing the clock down. Seattle, very good rushing team, 4.8 rushing yards per attempt. That's one of the better teams in the NFL at rushing. I would say probably one of the top teams in the NFL at rushing. The problem with Seattle is the Niners are a good rushing team too, 4.7 rushing yards per attempt. They just kind of got better at the end of the year, especially after Christian McCaffrey got his feet wet. But Seattle gives up 4.9 yards per attempt, while San Francisco, the best defense, at least against the run, only gives up about 3.4 rushing yards per attempt. So, I mean, the spread in this game, not going to lie, my number is over 7. I would love to grab Seattle here in this situation. And I think it's a very volatile game. What if the event is too big for Brock Purdy? That could happen with a young quarterback, coming into such a big situation like this. Seattle, Pete Carroll being smart, running the clock, stacking the box, making Brock Purdy beat you with his arm. Maybe you just double cover, put a safety over Kittle. Maybe you have to just make Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk beat you, which would beat you with a good quarterback, with a Tua, with a Mahomes, with a Burrow, right? Even with an average quarterback, probably like a Kirk Cousins, that would beat you. But we don't know a lot about Brock Purdy. So if I'm Seattle, that's how I'm playing this game. I am trying to put the pressure on them. My number is very close to this. I have, just because San Francisco has been so powerful recently, I have it around the -8.5, -9 range. But if I had to make a play in this game, I would bet Seattle. I would definitely play Seattle. It'd be dog or pass in this situation. I also think that Seattle should be able to put up some points. What I do like about Geno is that, he obviously has over, I believe, 30 touchdowns and over 4,000 yards passing. He's got great receivers there. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, really, really good receivers. 6.9 passing yards per attempt, not great. But if he can just have a good game and, show up against San Francisco, maybe he can get the ball to his receivers, because I think if there's any weakness in San Francisco's defense, the Kansas City Chiefs exploited it this year. What the Kansas City Chiefs did was throw over the top. Mahomes had a wonderful game. All the receivers did when they dominated San Francisco in the air. First get the ball quickly out of Geno's hands. Don't make him sit in the pocket. And that's what the problem was with Pete Carroll when they first played. They made Geno sit in the pocket, the 5-step, 7-step drop stuff, which guys like Joey Bosa are just going to eat you alive in that situation. So if Pete Carroll can be smart and just get the pressure off Geno, quick dink and dunk, quick slant type plays, wheel routes to the running back, and then when San Fran's D tires out, you can start screwing around a little bit. But play action, I don't know if I trust Pete Carroll enough to do that. Looking at this game, I almost think that maybe the money line would be a play if you had to play it, because you're going to get very good odds on the money line at plus 410. I bet Fred right here, you can see it is at plus 410. So it just seems to be a volatile game when you're playing against a rookie quarterback with only a couple games of experience. So there you go. I feel the spread is close, but I definitely will lean to Seattle. And if this for some reason gets past the 9.5 to the 10.5 range, the EV would say for me to make a play on Seattle. So in that situation, I might. So that was my thoughts on that game. Let's move on to the Chargers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. This has kind of been back and forth here. It is now up to 2.5. I have to assume that maybe Mike Williams has a good report. I've been looking at it all day, just like throughout the year. Still listed as questionable. Wasn't spotted in the media access portion of Wednesday's practice, so no report yet. Rashawn Slater is coming back for the Chargers, which is very good. The Chargers still have some serious problems when J.C. Jackson, one of their best corners, got injured back in October. They have some defensive tackles that are hurt, which definitely worries me. The interesting thing for me, and I think this would be a different spread if Jacksonville looked better last week. Trevor Lawrence had a bad game, and he probably kind of had a little bit of nerves. Jacksonville kind of turned into the Jacksonville franchise a little bit against the Titans, but thank God their defense at the end really kind of came back. Trevor had a bad game. It doesn't mean that they weren't necessarily not hot coming in to the playoffs. The Chargers have a huge hole against the run. You think Seattle's bad against the run at 4.9? The Chargers allow 5.4 rushing yards per attempt. We also know that Trevor Lawrence is a very good running quarterback. I think in a game this big, do or die type situation, you're going to get Lawrence running the ball some. And I think I like the Trevor Lawrence rushing prop. And not a lot of props are loaded yet, but I'm probably going to lean in that direction. And I'm just seeing if anything's updated right here. Game props, player props, Trevor Lawrence. Nope, just anytime touchdowns are up. So nothing up yet, but I expect maybe in the teens, you're going to get a play on Trevor Lawrence for his rushing yards. But Trevor Lawrence has been known to take off running, especially in big games. And you've seen him do that many times in Clemson, So if Jacksonville has, I guess weaknesses, it is their defense. Their defensive EPA hasn't been great over the years. Even this year. I think they're kind of in the middle-ish. Well, they're number 12 in EPA this year. They're not terrible. Actually, a lot closer to average. But, that's the problem. My issue with the Chargers, you got to admit, Justin Herbert is a fantastic quarterback. Justin Herbert's got great weapons if Mike Williams is available. But this is still a really tough spot for the Chargers. They've been traveling all over the place. They made a really weird move by playing their starters last week. I can't figure that out. I know that Joey Bosa got a little banged up last week. Now, the good news, he's not on the injury report, right? Joey Bosa is not on the injury report, so that's huge for them. But I think that's going to be a shootout. Okay. I can see Jacksonville putting up some points and throwing to Ingram and some of their great players over there. And the Chargers have Everett, which I think is maybe the most underrated tight end in the whole game. If there's an issue where Mike Williams is not going to be playing this game, and this is a quick turnaround coming to Saturday, I'm going to certainly look to some Gerald Everett props and see if that's available. I played the over at the 47, and I still like this over at the 47 and a half. Really not a ton of movement. I don't think Jacksonville's defense is any good. And I think you can kind of look what happened against the Titans and just brush it under the rug and say, well, that's not how they've been playing recently. I expect a big bounce back. One thing that you can look at in this game is a teaser. And that's what I will be partnering with on another play when I get to that. I think Jacksonville's a great teaser leg because they are A, at home, and B, they have the better coach, right? I mean, it's not even close. Doug Peterson is definitely a much better close than Staley. And you saw that last week. So you're going to get a coaching advantage with Jacksonville. I also like the fact that Peterson's a Super Bowl champion. He knows how to get his team ready. I was really hoping this gets to 3. And if it gets to 3, I might have to also make a play on Jacksonville. But right now, this is the perfect teaser leg, in my opinion. Jacksonville, 4.7 rushing yards per attempt. The Chargers are only at 3.8, but keep in mind when they throw the ball to Eckler. If you count like those screen passes and stuff, then the Chargers are certainly a better team, than you think in that area. But coaching wise, you definitely give it to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But quarterback, you give it to the Chargers. You give the quarterback to the Chargers. Home field advantage for Jacksonville. My numbers definitely don't have the Chargers favored. But then again, the Chargers were a lot more banged up mid-season. So interesting scenario. Love the teaser leg in this situation. Let's move on to the next game on Sunday now. We have the Miami Dolphins versus the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills are minus 13.5. The total of this game is at 43.5. Man, this is just a bad situation for Miami with the Tua. I mean, if you've had this many concussions, you might be prone to them for the rest of your career. They have to have a doctor clear you, when it comes to concussion protocol. They have to have a doctor clear you. Even if Tua is okay to, let's just say, last year's standards or the year before, the media has put so much pressure on the NFL that if Tua gets another concussion, even though he clears it, that would put blame on the doctor himself. So which doctor is going to come in and clear Tua to play in this game? That's one bad thing going for Miami. The next bad thing was, Skylar Thompson's not that good of a quarterback, and it has shown. It showed when he played the Jets a couple times. It's pretty much shown all season. He wasn't that good at Kansas State either. I don't know what they saw in him, but I took this at plus 11 thinking that Tua should be able to play. I probably should have. I definitely should have waited. I have a bad number on this now that it's 13, but there's a reason why it's not going to 14. And the reason is Buffalo. A lot of people say that, Damir Hamlin's going to come back and he's going to watch the game and it's going to charge them all up. But what's that going to do for their safety? What's that going to help them there? If you watch that Buffalo New England game, Buffalo lost that game without 2 special teams touchdowns. Even the Matt Patricia-led Patriots were moving the ball against them. The Buffalo Bills on defense has been massively leaking oil. That is a big concern for me. Buffalo used to be a top defense. They've moved all the way down to top 7 in their defense. And over the last 6 weeks, I'm just waiting for this to populate, but here it comes. Buffalo is top 10 in defense over the last 6 weeks. They're giving up yards, So maybe like Mike McDaniel, who is supposed to be this rushing guru, can kind of put it together. Now, I expect Tyreek Hill to play. He's on the injury report. He left last game, and I was thinking he left last game more for the fact that precaution. He's actually not even on the injury report. Raheem Mostert broke his thumb. Does a running back need his thumb? Kind of. Hold the ball with the other hand, cradle it a little bit, but they still have Jeff Wilson over there, which is very important. Jalen Waddle was limited in practice. I expect him to try to get through it. It does say Jeff Wilson was ill in practice. Even Teddy Bridgewater was limited in practice. So there's a chance you could see a Teddy Bridgewater sighting. It is do or die for them. So when Miami played them in Buffalo, I got to tell you, I like how Mike McDaniel seems to know McDermott's stuff. He seems to know how that team will prepare for a game and how they beat you. I mean, Miami could have won that game in Buffalo the last time they played, and it was in the freezing cold temperatures. Now, don't get me wrong. With Skylar Thompson, anything is possible. You might see that massive Buffalo offense, and it doesn't matter how bad their defense is. You just wait for the quarterback to screw up, and this thing is covered. Right now, when I give it out at 11 or 13, not sure I would. But I think there's still a lot of paths to victory for the Miami Dolphins here. I mean, how many times has Buffalo just given up the lead to inferior teams? The Packers got back into the game, kind of. Well, they covered the spread, I should say. The Vikings came back. The Vikings are quite fraudulent, and we're going to get to that game, trust me. But the Vikings are a very fraudulent team themselves here. So I got to tell you, I can see the Bills kind of come in a little bit overconfident in Miami, slowing the game down, running the football. That could possibly happen with a guru like McDaniel. He was the rushing guru that came from the Kyle Shanahan tree. I think that's very important to look at. I'm looking at the injury report here. Doesn't look great, but I expect their tackles to play. Terran Armstead, Kendall Lamb, a couple of the other guys. I expect their linebackers to play. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. They played last game. They're getting a nice little break here. But, this might be one of those games where the Bills fans might be biting their hands. Now, I think the Bills win. It's either going to be a blowout or it's going to be a closer game than most people suspect. So I hope it's Bridgewater for my bad bet, but I just wanted to kind of cover why I still think there was a chance that I'm actually going to be in this game. Let's move on to the next game. The Minnesota Vikings -3 hosting the Giants. God, man. I've been waiting for this spread to move up, and I finally had to make a move because it's not. Sometimes when you've been doing this for as many years as I have, when the thing's flattened out. And I don't even think the public can move the Vikings up to 3.5 here. The total of this game is high at 48, played in a dome. I mean, what can you say about the Vikings? They finished up a really bad Bears team that wanted to lose last week. What did they look like at the Packers last week? Just absolutely incompetent and terrible. Now, the Vikings did play the Giants earlier this year, but the Giants were more banged up. I do have a play on this game, and my number is certainly not at 3. So both these teams, very, very, well, I don't know if they're overrated. They don't belong in the playoffs. They both were outscored by their opponents if you add up all the points during the regular season. I think coaching got the Giants there, and I think talent got the Vikings there. The Vikings, what are they, like 12-0 in one-score games or something? Just a crazy stat, but this could be the one that bites them. Both teams are negative 0.4 yards per play. Negative 0.4 yards per play. Okay. Minnesota's weakness against the pass. They allow 7.3 yards per attempt. They aren't great against the run either, allowing 4.5 yards per rush. Not like one of the worst, but probably bottom 15, 20. Yeah, maybe I would say. No, 15 or 10, I would say. The Giants, their weakness is against the run, allowing 5.2 rushing yards per attempt. But will Dalvin Cook be able to exploit that? I'm not so sure. That's the whole problem here. The Vikings only average 4.1 rushing yards per attempt this year. They're very, very banged up on the offensive line. When I pull up the Vikings injury report, it is extremely concerning on the offensive line. You can see guys like Austin Schlottman, right, from January 4th, placed on IR, one of their guards. Brian O'Neill, tackle, partially torn Achilles against the Packers, put on injured reserve, both on January 4th, right? And then you look later, Garrett Bradbury, their center, banged up. I think he missed last game. Don't really know what's going on there. I think it's a knee, but he's possibly going to miss this game. Imagine your center that calls the plays, possibly missing this game. I don't like that. I think that the Vikings are certainly a little bit more, susceptible to getting rushed on, pass rush. I think that it's nice that Zadarius Smith's off this injury report. Where last time I looked, I was going to mention his name, but he's not. I think they're going to get an offensive tackle back in Brandel, but he hasn't played in a long time. So I'm very concerned for the rushing game. Only 4.1 yards per rush. That is something to certainly think about. But Saquon Barkley has been an absolute beast, and he's got the genius of Dayball kind of behind him. The Giants' strength is really running the football, 4.9 yards per attempt, right? And if the Vikings are giving up, 4.5, there could be a little bit of discrepancy there. Also, this game rests on Kirk Cousins' shoulders. He hasn't really shown good in big spots, prime spots, right? I mean, this is the normal time, but he knows all the eyes on this game. I like how the Giants rested their guys. They said, we're not beating the Eagles. Webb, get in there and play. Daniel Jones, take a break. Let's kind of regroup and just recalibrate and get ready for the playoffs. They're in the number 6 seed already. They probably knew they were playing the Vikings too in this situation. Both teams giving up more points. Both teams giving up more yards per play. That Vikings defense is just despicable. Just put it nicely. I think the Vikings defense in EPA per play is pretty low. I can't find the stat right now, but it's definitely in the bottom third in the whole league. The Giants defense isn't that great either, but it'll just take a couple easy Kirk Cousins mistakes. Okay, here it is. Over the last 6 weeks, the Giants are 20th in defensive EPA on a pretty easy schedule, including the Bears in there. I'm taking the Giants +3. I think it's also a good teaser leg if you want to tease them with somebody else. But right now at the +3, I love this play. I think the Giants definitely have a shot to win out. So the next game we're going to talk about is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And let me share my screen here so you can see, for anyone viewing, -9.5 now for the Bengals. Well, this is on Betfred. The total is 40.5. Unfortunately, I've been giving this out all week. It was at the 7.5 when I gave out this teaser leg with Jacksonville. Now it crossed this threshold here, which makes it unteasable. I'm going to check DraftKings to kind of see where they're at. Yep, both 9. Everything's at 9.5, and it's kind of everything I said about Lamar Jackson. He's not playing. There's more reasons than injuries that we don't need to get him involved in. But either way, it's bad for the Ravens. It's bad for the organization. It's an ugly look, and I'm sure the players are going to rally together. But right now, I can see a lot of upside with this Bengals team. I took the Bengals at -5.5 personally. It moved to 6.5 right after. I thought about it. Then I gave out a small play to subscribers at the 6.5, and now it's moved to 9.5. Well, the Bengals was a wonderful teaser leg, so now I have to get off that. But I will say that I probably still would play the Bengals at the 9.5. I think the Bengals are kind of in that pissed off situation. They could have put more points on the Ravens last week. They just wanted to win and get in the playoffs. But they feel they're disrespected because they feel like, they were pretty honorable in what happened to Damir Hamlin, and I respect that. But they also got punished for it because they had a legitimate chance to be number one if the pressure was put on Kansas City to lose to the Raiders. Well, that didn't happen because, there was less pressure, but they could have been the 2 seed coming in here. Now, this is their only home game, assuming Buffalo wins, right? They have to go to Buffalo. I mean, so they're kind of in the same boat as they were last year, but they're a better team because they fixed their offensive line, right? I mean, that's the most important thing is the trenches. I've always said that. I've always said that when it comes to handicapping games. The trenches is the most important thing. Baltimore is a rushing team, and they average 5.2 rushing yards per attempt. Cincinnati doesn't run the ball well. They average 3.8 running yards per attempt. But they can throw the ball to Pirine. They can throw the ball to Mixon. You see a ton of that. And you also see them do it in the during their games, right? You see them do it during big games. If you remember how big Mixon was last year in the playoffs, it was absolutely huge. I mean, the big thing is Cincinnati's passing game just towers over Baltimore. But Baltimore's got the worst passing game in the league, or one of the worst. Okay, the Bears are the worst. But, I mean, if you look at, team statistics and passing yards per attempt, Baltimore is right there at the bottom here. They're ranking 23rd in passing yards per attempt. And in passing yards per game, Baltimore is 28th in the league. They're a terrible and I don't expect Huntley to pass well. He hasn't shown he can. And I certainly don't expect Brown to pass well. I think this is almost going to be like a free-for-all. Cincinnati kind of putting the stop to them. A lot of people are nervous for Cincinnati. I'm not. Cincinnati is my number one team on my power ratings. I think they are the most complete team in the whole league. And the reason that is because they're just extremely good on offense. They have T. Higgins, who's a beast, tall beast. They have speedy Jamar Chase, who, I mean, him and Jefferson may be the best 2 receivers in the league. I mean, Tyreek Hill's there too, but Jesus, man. Pick your poison there. I mean, who would want to face any 3 of those guys, right? DK Metcalf too, I guess, but put those 3 up there. I mean, what are you going to do? You got T. Higgins, you got him. You also got Boyd, who was a number 1 guy 3-4 years ago before they were blessed with T. Higgins. I mean, Cincinnati is just massively powerful. Cincinnati got a little banged up on the offensive line a little bit earlier in the season. And I guess that's my little bit of hesitation. But, when they lost La'el Collins, they still had some good backing. They didn't take a ton of offensive line injuries. As a matter of fact, La'el Collins on December 30th was the first one. They recently lost Alex Kappa, which is another guard, a little bit of suspect too. But T. Higgins was sick, and he's now came back to practice. If you look on the Baltimore Ravens side of things, they've certainly hit the injury bug a lot worse. Now, J.K. Dobbins is playing. And if the Ravens want any chance of sniffing this game, they have to run the football. Gus Edwards had a concussion. He was at practice, so I'm guessing he's going to play. Tyler Huntley was throwing, so he's possibly going to play. Just so much questionable right there. But they lost guys like Devin Duvernay. They lost guys like John Ross, their linebacker. I love the fact that they have Roquan Smith, and Roquan Smith better have that $20 million a year game if they want to be close to this. I'm going to give you a lean at -9.5 on the Bengals here. They should be able to just exploit over the air against this Baltimore team. Baltimore's just going to have to come up with a lot of different blitzes if they think they're going to get to Joe Burrow. It's going to be a hard-fought game on that side of the ball. But Burrow's just so good and so crafty. I expect the Bengals to show up here and win. I love them as a teaser leg down to the 2.5. I got them down to -1 when I did it early, but at the 9.5, I certainly cannot recommend a teaser leg going to 3.5. That would be a negative EV move. Finally, let's get to the Dallas Cowboys versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. And man, this is kind of like the Jacksonville spread. You got the home dog here in Florida. Tampa Bay plus 2.5. The total is 45.5. I mean, it's a perfect spread and a perfect total, in my opinion. Here's why. Metrically, I have the Cowboys winning by 5 points. Sorry, it's after Dallas's last game, though, my numbers came through. It's -4 now. I have Dallas -4. Tampa, of course, played a lot of scrubs last game. They scored that first touchdown and then obviously put their scrubs in. There's a couple things with Tampa that I didn't like this year. And well, for one, their coaching is terrible. I don't like Leftwich as a coordinator. I think Leftwich is just a bad coordinator, just like Todd Bowles is a bad coach. But do you need a coach with Brady? I mean, Brady's kind of shown before that he can somewhat be the coach like we used to see a little bit with Peyton Manning. So the Tampa Bay Bucks lost Ryan Jensen, one of their centers, and Robert Hainsey, their backup center, was ruled out for the rest of the game against the Falcons. So that's a little worrisome. So you got to look at that a little bit. It looks like Josh Wells went to injury reserve too, one of their tackles. So I'm a little concerned for the offensive line. I expect the heart of the team to play. I think that Evans has finally woke up. He's been a horrible fantasy wide receiver this year. Godwin's been the better receiver. You still got Julio Jones there that just probably waiting for the playoffs, at the twilight of his career. It's like, he's a playoff guy, right? So the thing about Tampa, it's funny looking at them being a dog here when you remember how it was in the beginning of the season. Not much has changed, except for on Dallas's side, they probably got a little bit worse than their perception in the beginning of the year, right? Dallas has been banged up. They're banged up on the offensive line a little bit. They are Biotish, their center, is questionable. Their one of their offensive tackles, Steele, was put on injury reserve in December. Matt Farnack is their guard, is going to possibly return, so that's good. But Tampa was a lot more injured during the season, and they kind of came back a little bit more healthy towards the end of the season. That's why you see them kind of make a run. Going back to Dallas, Leighton Vander Esch, I think he's a key linebacker here. And if he can't make it in this game, I don't think they're going to stop Tampa. That's my problem. Because Tampa, scheme-wise, plays perfectly against a team like Dallas. Dallas needs plays to develop to ball hawk, right? They have that ball hawking defense with Diggs there. They jump routes and things like that. But Tom Brady gets rid of the ball very fast. And he can kind of smell some of that early stuff out if they're going to play press or move the guys up towards the box. If anything, I compare Tampa to a basketball team. The basketball teams that are good in college shoot the three a lot, and they score at the rim a lot. They don't do mid-range stuff. Well, that's Tampa. They put their players in position to get extra yards after catch. They're a very good yards after catch team. And then they'll throw deep over the top and Godwin to keep your defense honest. Well, that's the way to beat Dallas's defense. Quick, get the ball out, get the guys in action. Then Dallas's defense can get absolutely stomped. And I've seen that happen before. The reason that that's one of the reasons that I don't like my -4 number on Dallas metrically. Another reason, Rolstad is the official here, and I'm one of the few cappers that do look at officiating numbers. Rolstad is 58 against the spread for away teams. I think that's key. I think that's very interesting, and I hate going against guys like that. It's burned me in the past, and that's why I started doing this a little bit more. If you look at Rolstad, teams average away 22.4 and teams at home average 22. So that even means you're taking the home field advantage out. All Craig Rolstad games has the away team scoring more, and there's a large sample size. He's reffed over 90 games, you know? So that's massive. I think you got to look at that. And so I don't know what he's going to do. I always said that Tampa has the biggest home field advantage out of pretty much any team. So it goes a little bit against that narrative. But I'm fighting between perfect metrics, the Cowboys, and how powerful they are. They should be able to, beat this Dallas team or this Tampa team. But you can't give the Cowboys much of a coaching advantage with McCarthy there. Because even though Todd Bowles is bad, McCarthy is worse. And I'm sorry, but you got to give the quarterback advantage to Tampa. So I'm really torn on this game. I think the Dak Prescott interception prop is in order. You might want to, take a look and see where that is, because he's been throwing a lot of picks lately. And if they're in a bad situation, they're going to force the ball a little bit. So look at that prop. I'm sure that prop's going to be a popular one for a lot of teams, actually, this game. So kind of wonder how that one's going to go. I like taking both sides in this game. I think that a lot of people are going to look at some of the stuff I said about Tampa, how Tom Brady's just been amazing in the playoffs, and they've just been waiting for the playoffs. They actually have a kind of the sneakiest path to number one, too. They play an Eagles team that's been, kind of hurting lately if they win this game. So they actually have a pretty interesting path. I didn't take any futures like I did last year. We had the Bengals at 20-1 last year to win the Super Bowl, and we hedged out of it at the Super Bowl, which was fantastic. I don't see any value this year. But I think if you take the Tampa Bay Bucks and tease them with another team, you can have an opportunity to buy out of it later. I think this spread is only going to get worse. I think it's going to get to pick them. I think there's going to be money coming in on a home dog here at Tampa. People are going to think Brady, 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 Brady. And then by that time happens, you're going to have your teaser lag at +8.5. And then you're going to be able to take like a pick 'em for the Cowboys and have a nice 8-point middle for your bet. I would do it the same amount. So why don't we do that? Let's take Tampa Bay instead of Cincinnati for this podcast. Let's take Tampa Bay all the way up to 8.5. And let's take them with Jacksonville all the way up to 8.5. Hopefully the Jacksonville side covers, and then we're going to be in position for a nice middle opportunity come playoffs. So hope you enjoyed our NFL segment. If you have any other questions for us, feel free to tweet us at the Oddsbreakers or email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com.